to another episode of the When Life Happens podcast. I'm your host, William Jackson, and so excited when we have another opportunity to live, learn, and grow together. I hope and pray that your week has started off well, that you are living at the highest level of your potential, that you're not settling for less than what you deserve, and that you are walking in the fulfillment that is available for you. And we have a great topic that we're going to talk about today. It's actually going to be the start of a series. We're going to do a 4-part series because I think each part of this topic that we're going to discuss deserves its own episode. So for all of my note takers around the world, this is a great opportunity to lean in and really extract some of these life tools, because that's the goal of the podcast. The goal is to give you life tools that you can apply in any season of life, where you can actually extract things and not just hear them for your listening or viewing pleasure, but that you can take practical tools and apply them to your everyday life. That's the goal, because life happens to us all. It doesn't matter where you are. Pain is indiscriminate. Loss is indiscriminate. There are certain things that are going to happen just because you are alive. So the goal is to provide you as much or as many tools to proactively prepare you for when life happens. So I'm excited. I'm excited about this series because where we are in, I believe, history is a very both fragile and exciting space. I don't know if you've been feeling this way, but there are a lot of things that seem like we're just on the cusp of something new happening. We're just on the precipice of something exploding in our lives, in our culture. And there's this level of both excitement, but also anxiousness. It's like I feel something coming, but I don't know what it is. I can feel that something's brewing, but I don't have an inclination as to where it's going to come or when it's going to come. Have you ever been in that space where you knew without a shadow of a doubt that things were going to happen for you, but you just didn't know when? That is such a pivotal place when you are waiting on things to happen. You know, it's not a matter of doubt. It's not a matter of uncertainty about what you know is going to happen for you and through you, but it's that waiting process. How do you handle the waiting when you are trying to figure out when? Because it feels like that in today's society and culture. I don't know if you've been feeling that, but I've been feeling like that. It's been feeling like things are about to happen in such an incredible way, and we just don't know when. So we're going to start this series. I believe that the tools that we are going to extract are going to help us proactively prepare for whatever's coming. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's dive in. The title of this series is going to be C.O.R.E, C.O.R.E. And we're going to be digging in to try to figure out who we are at the core of ourselves. At the core of you, who are you? There are 4 main areas that we're going to take a look at to identify who we are at the core of our being and how we can be preparing for whatever's coming next. Because if you don't know who you are to the core of you, it is easily to be swayed by people's opinions. It's easy to be swayed by people's perspective, because people always have a perspective or an opinion about your life. Do you know those people who always have something to say about what you have going on? They always have an opinion. And if you don't know who you are to the core of you, you can very well slip into trying to fit the mold of the perspective of people around you, because they will then start trying to force ideas, ideologies, perspectives on you. And then we are trying to figure out our way through life. But if I don't know who I am at my core, then I am very susceptible of actually swaying into what people think. And this is how we get into this aspect of people pleasing, because once you start adopting people's opinions, then you want to start living a life that keeps their opinions or their perspective of you in a positive bracket. And so many people are living life trying to please people. We're trying to figure it out because we don't know who we are to the core of us. Because once you know you and you get secure in you, then you can start tapping into the fullness of what God has in store for your life. So, we're going to talk about four main areas of how we can really identify who we are at the core of us. I believe that you can tell a lot about a person when they have nothing, when they have everything, or when they're under the influence. Now, we don't encourage any influencing, but these are the times when people are most honest, right? So I'm going to give you four areas of how you can identify who you are, and where are some areas that we can grow in? Where are some areas that we can improve? Because that's what it's about. It's about growth. It's about leaning in, and how can I be more intentional about my growth, about my development, so that I can maximize this thing we call life. So if you're looking at CORE as an acronym, C-O-R-E, these are going to be the four areas of our focus of how we can identify where we are, who we are, and where we can actually lean in for some growth and development. So this week, we're going to focus on the C, because you can tell a lot about a person, so much about a person, when you put them in areas of conflict. Oh, this is when you can find out who we really are down to the nitty gritty. How do you handle conflict? Let's stop there. Like, just really take a moment, stop and think. How do you handle conflict? Are there things that you know that you could improve on? Or you one of those people who, when you get in conflict, some people are hot-headed. Some people have a very short fuse. Some people don't handle conflict well because of past situations. People don't handle conflict well because it's uncomfortable. No one wants to be at odds with one another. No one wants to be in a space where the energy is tense. No one wants to be in a space of conflict. But how you handle conflict will determine how much you are ready for. If you cannot successfully handle conflict, I'll be very honest with you, you are not prepared for anything great in value. Because anything or any level of greatness comes with an automatic level of associated or appropriated conflict. The more you grow, the more conflict you will have, because growth is oftentimes uncomfortable. And so many times in our growing process, we're experiencing emotional conflict internally, because we're trying to grow out of a season that we've been in and to step into a season that we know that we're supposed to be in. But it's that tearing away of something or a life that you've known for so long. It can create a level of emotional internal conflict within yourself. So we're going to look at conflict in a couple of different ways. We're going to look at our internal conflict. Then we're going to look at external conflict with people. We're going to look at mental conflict. And then we're going to look at the types of conflict that we may not necessarily know that we're stepping into, right? So it's going to be just an episode full of how to deal with conflict. You ready? Let's dive in. So since we've already started there, let's jump in talking about our emotional internal conflict. Because so much of things that happen in life are not happening to us, but they're happening through us. Right? It's very easy for people to take a victim mentality. Oh, somebody said this, or this happened to me, or why is this not happening to me? But oftentimes what we don't see is the things that are happening in us that may be altering our perspective of what's happening around us. How many times have you been in that space where you're growing in life, and whether it be your heart or your perspective or your mindset, and you've developed a system of operating, right? You have your operating system where you know how to maneuver in this space. You know how to maneuver in this relationship. You know how to maneuver on this job. You know how to maneuver in this area of your life. But then when things start to change, a relationship ends, there's a layoff, or there's even a promotion. What happens is internally, we have to now rewire to get to a place where we are able to be effective in this new space and season. And whenever you have to rewire some things, it creates emotional internal conflict. I tell people all the time, whenever you are stepping into a new place, it is imperative to make sure that you provide yourself an opportunity to grieve the last place. Whenever you are stepping into a new space, it's imperative that you give yourself an opportunity to grieve the last place. Now, you may be coming out of places that were toxic, right? You may be coming out of places that were difficult. But in the grieving process, what you do is you get out all of the emotional residue of anything that connects you to that past moment. I can always tell people who haven't effectively grieved a space where they have come out of is because there are so many triggers that are available whenever something of the past reminds them, or something shows up from the past, or something happens. I can tell when we haven't fully grieved or got to a place where we got the residue out of us completely, when that, what I call the emotional easy button, still works. When something can happen and they can push that button and it can cause a response or an uproar, or for you to get out of character, then there is a place that's still very active in you. And some part of that past situation or relationship or whatever you're coming out of is still very much alive. We focus so much on the healing process of just let it go, right? Just got to let it go so you can heal. But there is something in you that you have to go through, that emotional process of grieving. Grieving is actually so healthy, to be able to focus on how you feel, the things that you are actually carrying, so that you can step fully into what's next. So many times people have the difficulty of grieving the loss of a loved one, and I totally understand it. When I lost my grandmother, I'm telling you, it shocked and rocked my whole world. And in this process of knowing the fine line between internalizing and slipping into depression, I discovered this process of what I call the grieve and go, where you have moments where you can create spaces to effectively get some of this emotional internal conflict out of you, so that you can be effective in the next season. Otherwise, you will internalize for so long that it will start coming out in other areas that you can't necessarily identify. There are some people who have internalized for so long, it's become, now the toxin within them has become their just mental and emotional disposition, where you may have met those people, maybe customer service agents or people you may have come across, who just seems like they're hard, they're jaded, they don't have an ability to connect with people. Oftentimes that's a result of, you go through difficult times, you internalize it, you stuff it, and then it starts seeping out into your natural mechanisms of how you connect with people. You can stuff stuff away so much that you can't even identify why you are acting the way you're acting. This emotional internal conflict has the ability to alter how you connect in every scenario of your life. You ever been in that place where you may have had a rough day or a rough week, and then all of a sudden you just don't know why you're just naturally irritable? Why things just, everything is just getting on your nerves? Listen, I'll be very honest with you. I get like that when I'm hungry, or when I'm sleepy, or when I'm hot. When I'm hot, oh, listen, I get super irritable and everything just seems to bother me. But I gotta realize that there's an emotional internal conflict, and my response in this situation may not be a adequate response for what's happening around me, but it could be as a result of the emotional internal conflict. That how I feel right now is making me react, or it's leading my reactions. There's so much of conflict that happens on the inside that goes unaddressed. Why? Because we got to keep it moving. We got to be on to the next thing. We got to be moving. And when we keep moving and we don't take the time to adequately address what just happened, we are taking all of the pain, the frustration, the disappointment, the hurt, and we are bottling it up and we're literally transferring it to the next situation. So you got to be able to address the conflict internally by stopping one and taking a moment to effectively grieve when you're coming out of a place. You may have worked a job for years and then you hated it, and then you got fired, and then now you're going into a new job. If you don't stop and address all of the stuff that happened on the old job, then what you will do is take some of that same mentality, some of that same mindset, some of that same disposition into your next season or your next job. We got to be able to stop and say, okay, I came out of this. How do I feel? What's on my mind? Like, what really happened in this last season? What happened there? What are things that I can extract? Because so many times when we come out of a situation, we want to erase. Something's difficult, we just want to erase it from the memory. But there's so much stuff that can be extracted to set us up for a new level of success. But I got to stop and really identify what happened to me there so that I can work on it to make sure that anything that negatively affected me there, I'm not taking over here. How do you address the internal conflict? You got to be intentional. You have to actually get to the place where you have a process of whenever you end something, you take an assessment. How do I feel? What happened there? What was good for me there? What was bad for me there? What lessons can I take and learn and apply to my next season? Because if you don't address the internal conflict, I guarantee you, whatever was happening on the inside of you back then will transition over into your next place. And then if we're not careful and we don't address the internal conflict, we will make the next people pay, the next job pay, the next relationship pay for the things that we didn't work out of us from the last season. So when we're addressing internal conflict, one, when you end something, you have to stop and take an assessment. Two, you have to be intentional about navigating through how you feel, what you experienced, and what areas that you can extract. What lessons did you learn? And then you also have to know that when you're coming into something new, if you haven't done the work to make sure that that emotional easy button no longer works, you can rest assured that someone in this next season, inadvertently or on purpose, is going to hit that button. And internally, if I haven't dealt with the conflict of coming out of something in preparation for something new, in preparation for something better, can I tell you that even when you get a promotion, there is a level of conflict that goes on in trying to figure out the new position. You're trying to figure out or navigate how you operate on this level. And you got to be intentional of knowing, what am I feeling? How am I in tune with the core of me, like in the depths of my soul? Because if I'm not intentional and not in tune, then I'll just chalk up whatever I'm feeling to, learning pains, or I just need to push past this, and our bodies give us signals. Our mind and our heart, they are beacons that let us know, okay, I might need to stop and actually assess here. I may need to pull over for a second. If you've ever been on a road trip and you start getting tired, you may be good for the first few hours. Let me tell you, I've done this. You may be good for the first few hours, but then eventually, if you have had no rest, your body will start giving you flashes that maybe you need to pull over. What'll happen? First, your eyes will start to droop a little bit. You'll start yawning more than usual. And I'm not talking about the soft yawns. I'm talking about like the lion roar yawns where your mouth is wide open and you can see the back dangly thing in your throat. Like when you start getting tired, your body starts to send you signals. Hey, you might want to stop. Hey, you might want to pull over. Hey, your eyes are drooping a little bit. Hey, you're drifting off into another lane. And it is our natural reaction to try to push ourselves past our limits. And when you start to push yourself past your limit, you create a level of internal conflict because something inside of you is saying you need to stop. You need to wait. You need to take a moment and breathe. And if you keep pushing past that feeling, you start running the risk of running into something. You run the risk of crashing. If you keep driving when you are tired and your eyes are drooping and you start to see that you're swaying in another lane, not only do you put yourself at risk, but you put everyone else on the road at risk. How many times are we doing that in our lives, trying to push past the conflict because I just got to get to the next destination? It's not just getting there, it's the journey of how you get there. And I have to be intentional to address my internal conflict. Because if I don't address my internal conflict, whatever is in me will begin to grow, it will begin to fester. It's like having a virus on the inside of you. If you don't address it early on, what happens? It gets worse. It starts to spread. And so much, I think, of our internal conflict has spread into areas of our lives because we refuse to stop and address it. So, how do you handle internal conflict? Because how you handle internal conflict will then determine how you handle external conflict. See, some of the times we are reacting to people because we still have an internal war going on the inside of us. We can't get to a place where we are navigating conflict effectively and healthy because we keep responding to people based on our stuffed internalized conflict from years ago. It's like when you have a trash can and you're at that place, and I don't know if you've ever been to like an event, and for some reason when stuff starts to pile up and it's a lot of people and trash begins to pile up, nobody stops and says, hey, let me just take this out. It just becomes like a master stacking game, right? We want to stack cups and plates and you want to put it at a specific angle so it doesn't tip over. You see that the trash is full, but we keep stacking and stuffing and stacking and stuffing and stacking and stuffing. And now it's leaking out externally because we think that because some of the internal conflict no one has been able to see. But every time you stack and stuff, you run the risk of it being exposed and start to pour out in your interactions. When you have fully got to a place where your internal conflict been, wherever you put the trash or the garbage of your internal conflict, if you don't keep that empty and you don't empty it regularly, then everything that's stuffed inside of you will start to filter out into your interactions. I got to take this trash out consistently. And we think that because, okay, I handled this conflict and I dealt with what happened in my childhood. Okay, now I'm healed from that, then I'm good. But how much of your life have you experienced conflict? How much have you internalized? I got to start taking this out consistently. You know what you should do? And I'm applying this. I'm talking to us. It's just you and I. We need to start having conflict dump days where we go through our weeks, our months, our years. Where were areas of conflict that affected me in a way that I may have held on to or may be holding on to for longer than I should be? I need to take this out. I need to dump this out because if I don't empty this trash that's eating away at my heart and my mind and my soul, then guess what? It's going to start filtering out into my conversations, into my interactions. It's going to filter out into how I do work. It's going to filter out in how I show up. And I got to be effective. And I can't be effective if I am consumed and full up with conflict. So when you are getting to that place where internally I am dumping this out, I got to get this off of me. What are your areas or places or spaces where you go to offload your stress, your frustration, the things that you're facing, the things that you lost? What is your offload place? Where do you go? What do you do that it causes you to be refreshed? Mentally, emotionally, it causes you to be in a place where you can now get back to where you're thriving and you are intentional in everything that you're doing. You got to have that place where you go to get refreshed, where you go to get renewed. Otherwise, you just keep packing and stuffing and stacking. And then that will automatically create conflict externally. Because when you are full up of internal conflict, it will automatically create external conflict because then you will start receiving and perceiving things through a defensive lens. This is how we know, one, I need to uproot. I need to get some of this stuff. I need to offload some of this. If the things that I am experiencing are creating avenues for me to be offended very easily, that is a sign that there is something that needs to be emptied out in me. How easily offended are you by what people say, by what people think? What are the things that create an external conflict? And if we're being honest, how much of it is rooted in this actual external situation and how much of it is rooted in our internal disposition? Am I responding to you because I'm stressed? Am I responding to you this way because I'm frustrated? Am I responding to you this way because I'm hurt? Now, there's a lot of conflict that happens as a result of our interaction with people. But the more I get to the place where I'm offloading, where I am dumping this conflict out of my mind, out of my heart, emotionally, I am getting it out. I'm detoxing. The more that I do that, the less likely I am to respond in a defensive or offensive way when I get into areas of conflict. I always know where I am mentally and emotionally by how I respond in moments of conflict. I can always tell if I just need to take a beat, if I need to take a nap, if I need to get in a place where I can cool off for a moment. I can always tell if I need to offload something by how I'm responding in moments of conflict. Because conflict is just an opportunity for us to come together and find common ground. Now, if there are times where you may have conflict with people that you can't find common ground on or with, Now, if I can't find common ground with you, then now we just develop a common understanding to where I can't work with you. We can't do this together. This isn't working. So we need to establish some parameters and some boundaries. Because if I am aware that externally that the person that I'm connected to is consistently putting me in a place where I'm responding out of a level of frustration, anger, or disappointment, then I gotta put some parameters in place to make sure that I am not allowing my external conflict to filter internally. Because I only respond negative once it filters down on the inside. People who have gotten that place where we're saying, you know what? I realize that where I am, and I've grown to a level to where I know that what I have achieved and where I am, I cannot risk by responding in a negative fashion. I always pay attention to people who have made it into areas and places and spaces that I aspire to be, right? I'm always looking to someone who, or looking at their lives. How do they handle the areas of conflict? How do they handle criticism? How do they handle crisis, right? Because once you reach a certain level, you are more in a place where you understand that whatever I do here will determine or affect more than just me. Because as I rise and as you grow, now you have more at stake, not just in terms of people who that are following you or people that you may have oversight over or people who may be looking to you for guidance, but you have more at stake when you start rising and being more confident and you start healing in the areas of peace. When you start healing in the areas of now you have joy and now you are happy and now you are in a place where you have clarity and you are can and you're free from toxic thinking. When you've done the work to get to a place of freedom, how you protect it is making sure that you handle the conflict effectively. Whatever you are facing, hey, I can't let that. I need to table this conversation. We need to walk away for a moment. You know what? This isn't working. I may need to make a change. When you reach a place where now you know that you need to protect it, you start handling conflict differently. Because I know that now, because I've grown and I've healed and I've gotten to a place of freedom and I'm achieving more success, that if I allow this to enter and filter down internally and it takes root, it has the power to destroy and tear down everything that I've been building. So, at the core of me, how do I handle conflict? Because how I handle conflict will determine what I am ready for. Conflict is a barometer of the level of success that you are prepared for. How do I handle this? How do I handle when there is a difficult conversation to be had? How do I handle when somebody says something negative about me? How do I handle when somebody's opinion or perspective may be offensive? How do I handle it? Because once I can master this level of conflict, when I step up, guess what's coming? More conflict. So I got to be able to learn how I maneuver through it. What are my conflict operating procedures? What are my parameters and my barriers, the things that establishing to protect me from being affected negatively by the conflict that I will face? Because as sure as you live, conflict is coming in every season of life. How you deal with it is a choice. And if I am intentional about consistently addressing it instead of running from it, because so many of us run from conflict. I don't want to have this conversation because it's tense, because I don't know what's going to happen. It's the fear of the unknown. If I say this, will it come out right? If I say this, are they going to receive it the right way? If I keep running from it, then I never create a space where I can offload it, because every time I run from it, I'm holding on to it. Because there are still feelings that are attached to this moment. When I'm running, I'm stuffing. I may not address it now, but if I don't address it, then I'm just going to keep stuffing it and stacking on top of it. And then if I'm not careful, then what will happen in my mind and in my heart is that it will take root and start affecting how I operate in every space of my life. So we got to get to the place of saying, okay, how do I handle conflict? To the core of me, what do I do in my approach with people in difficult situations? Because every difficult situation is an opportunity to grow and to be stretched. What if we start looking at conflict as a good thing? Oh, because conflict is an opportunity for me to be stretched. It's an opportunity for me to hear your perspective. It's an opportunity for me to see things through a different lens. It challenges me. But if I am not willing to address what's going on the inside of me, then everything on the outside of me will automatically be affected. Because at the core, I got to be prepared to deal with conflict in every season of life. And the more you grow and the more or the higher you go, you have to consistently relearn it. Because how you handled conflict as a toddler is not the same way that you can handle conflict as an adult. As a toddler, you may have been one of those who would throw a temper tantrum or snatch something out of someone's hand and say mine. You may have been one of those toddlers that'll just climb up on somebody's lap and slap them in the face. There's some toddlers who just have some tendencies. Have you ever been slapped by a toddler? You will get into a space where everything inside of you wants to react in this area of conflict in a negative way. But you know, it's just a baby. Imagine if you saw a grown adult throwing a temper tantrum on the floor, kicking, throwing things. You would say they need to be committed. It's something wrong with them. But if we don't learn how to handle conflict on the level that we're on, then when we get to our next level, we'll be applying old level tactics to the new level. So it's a growth aspect. So how do you handle conflict? What's your process? Are you intentional in how you address it? Do you have parameters where you're protecting your peace through the midst of it? Do you have things that, or places that you go, or things that you do to help offload some of the stress? What do you do to dump some of this conflict out, where you can get some of that negative energy consistently out of you? How do you handle it? Because if you don't offload it and you keep stuffing and stacking, it will filter out. And then when you offload it, then you can handle this specific moment with clarity instead of being clouded by the things that have happened in times previous. How do you handle conflict? I'm excited because next week we're going to talk about how to handle opportunity. Because after you handle conflict, what you step into oftentimes is a greater level of opportunity. Conflict oftentimes is an entry point to opportunity. And if you don't master how you handle conflict, you will taint the next opportunity that's on the other side of the conflict. Listen, I hope you got something out of this episode. I'm excited about dealing with who we are at the core, because if we can identify who we are at the core, we can create a space for us to grow effectively and to step into complete and total fulfillment. Listen, no matter where you go, no matter what you're facing in life, one thing that I always need you to understand is that you have everything inside of you that you need to overcome and succeed when life happens.